Hi, welcome on my channel. Today I would like to show you 5 easy steps how to secure communication between Azure App Service and Azure SQL. Stay tuned and jump to the demo. Hi, today I will show you the 5 easy steps how to secure communication between Azure App Service and Azure SQL. What problem we try to solve? We have the web application, typical web application like this, written in Angular, which fetch the list of products from backend database by using some API. Okay, it takes some time to load data, and we want to do this in a more secure way. So let's jump to some architecture. We have some kind of, in Azure Cloud, we will implement some kind of virtual network. It will be our VNet. In this VNet, we create 2 subnets. In subnet 1, we'll deploy our web application. And in Azure Cloud, we have also our database, Azure SQL database. Not like that, but maybe let's take the Azure SQL. And here we have the app service. By default, communication between app service and Azure SQL goes like that, and using the public endpoint. Okay, here. And this is the default way how this communication works. Let's put this on the left so it will be more visible, and maybe like that I think it will be. So this is the default behavior of the app service. And maybe some spacing. It's good to have more visibility. Okay. So like that. Maybe let's put 6, it will be enough. Okay, so this is the default behavior of communication. As we have currently, we fetch from our database, we fetch products. But we want to, and currently we are exposed by the public endpoints. So if anyone have the Azure user ID and password of our database can connect to this instance of the Azure SQL server. But what we want to do? We want to disable the public endpoint communication. So we remove this communication. And we want to utilize feature which is called the private endpoint, which will be deployed in the SNet number 2. So our communicate private endpoint. So our communication changed a little because it goes not directly to the Azure SQL, but to the private endpoint exposed by our instance. And here we have the communication on the private NIC. So we start utilizing the private network interface of Azure SQL. So our SQL server will be not exposed to public internet anymore. So and our data will be transferred in secure way using Microsoft Backbone network by private endpoint. Okay, so let's jump to our demo. So what we have here, we have few services. On the front of our application, we have the CDN, because our application is Angular application and is cached in the content delivery network to give faster access to the POI in the various regions. We have the app service plan, we have our SQL server, we have app service, and our database. So this is the most typical and simple configuration of the application for the users. Okay, so let's first of all, let's create our virtual network. Create. Let's choose the correct subscription, correct resource group, and let's call this VNet, as we have on our diagram. Next, go to the IP addresses. Let's leave as is, but let's leave the default version. Remove the default subnet. So let's create the SNet1. And let's put IP addresses like 016, maybe 24 will be much better. Okay, and we don't expose any service endpoints because we don't need this functionality. We want to utilize private link, private endpoint, SNet2. Have the network mask like that, and let's say we don't expose any endpoints. Okay, jump to the security tab. We don't need any firewall and so on, so let's go to review. And let's create our virtual network together with subnets. Okay, so during this deployment, okay, it's done. We can go back to our resource group. And first of all, let's jump to our SQL Server, go to the Networking tab, and let's disable the public access. Okay, so it is disabled, so our database will be no longer accessible from the internet. Go to the private access, and we create our private endpoint. Let's choose the region, and let's call this and SQL endpoint, or maybe Azure SQL endpoint. Okay, let's go to the resource, SQL Server. So it means that by this private endpoint, SQL Server will be exposed. Let's go to the virtual network, and let's go back to our diagram. And in the SNet2, we want to deploy this private endpoint. And we want to integrate this with our DNS zone. So it gives us the possibility to still use the name of the database, which will be resolved in our private DNS. Go to the tags, don't need any tags. Let's go to review and create. Okay, so let's deploy. Okay, so in the meantime, when the application is deploying, let's go back here. I will open the console. Let's go like that. Let's go here and try load again. Data is still loading because application is not cached this in the. It's not restarted. Okay, so our endpoint is deploying. Maybe let's restart application. Go to the app service. Let's do the quick restart. Okay, so application is restarted. Check again. Still is loading. It takes some time to, because it's also in the CDN cache, so maybe let's try this endpoint not from the CDN directly. Okay, so it's loading. Go to the products, and it's as it should. It's creating 500 error. Okay, so our private endpoint is still deploying. What else we need to do? Currently our application is running on the B1 app service plan. So this app service, when we go back to the application, this is the Linux app service plan. And when we go to the application, to the networking tab, we don't have the option to add. Okay, so let's add the VNet integration. Let's take the VNet, and let's take the subnet 1. Okay, okay. Okay, so it's still deploying. Okay, so our deployment is still in progress of private endpoint. So during this, let's sum up. So we deploy app service into the subnet 1, and we deploying the private endpoint to the subnet 2 to have the communication to Azure SQL using the private network interface. Okay, so this private network link is deploying. Go back to the dashboard, to the resource group. Let's go through the resources, what we have so far. As you can see, we have our private endpoint. We have the network interface connected to our virtual network. We can go to here. We can check the configuration. We have the IP address, we have the virtual network, and we see the subnet. Okay. We have also the private DNS zone, and when we go here, we have our Azure SQL server, which is pointing to this IP address. Of course, this private link is also linked to our virtual network. And when we go here, it is connected to our VNet. And of course, we have our virtual network. So let's go back to our application. As you remember, previously we don't have access to our database because the public endpoint was disabled. So let's see what happened now. We are waiting for the application to the response from the database. It also takes some time. In the meantime, I go to the app service. Maybe let's take the name of our data server. Yes. And okay, in the meantime, the data is finished loading. So as you can see, the data is loading correctly. But let's go back to the app service. Go to the SSH because this is the Linux app service plan. And I will show you one more thing. Let's try what changed in our DNS resolution. Let's type nslookup, put the name of the server, and as you can see, the response from DNS, so our private DNS zone, is we have this name of the database server, which canonical name is AD001 server private link database virtual network, and is pointing to this private IP address taken from our virtual network subnet 2. So that's all for today's demo. I think it's helpful. One more thing, what we can even improve in this architecture, because currently we are taking the connection string to the database from the application settings, from the connection strings. We can easily move here, put here also let's move like that. We can easily add the key vault here, which will be responsible for storing our connection string to the database. Maybe like that. it will be more clear. So in the key vault, we can have the connection string to our database in case when we need to have username password scenario. So for example, if we have the contained user in the database, defined in the database, but even more secure way is to not use key vault, but use the manage identity and connect to Azure SQL using manage identity, which is authenticated and authorized in Azure AD. Okay, so that's all for today, for today's demo. I hope it is helpful and give you some light into how to secure communication between app service and Azure SQL. Stay tuned for the next video like that. See you soon. Bye bye.